A 1960s classroom hit you before you sat down. Chalk dust in the air, floor wax on the tiles, damp mimeograph paper curling on the desk, and a metal bell loud enough to be heard 3 streets away. Walk through that door now, and the ordinary objects look almost unbelievable. Wooden desks bolted in rows, ashtrays in teachers' lounges, punishment paddles in drawers. And stay with us, because number 9 could get a teacher fired today. The blackboard was the front wall's command center. Teachers filled it with cursive, arithmetic, spelling words, and homework assignments, using real chalk that snapped in half if pressed too hard. Below it sat the tray, usually packed with white sticks, colored chalk saved for special diagrams, and erasers beaten soft by years of dust. At the end of the day, one student might get the prize job, take the erasers outside and clap them together until a pale cloud drifted across the playground. Above the door, or near the flag, the wall clock decided everything. When the minute hand reached the right spot, the metal bell took over. No phone buzzed, no screen reminded anyone. That bell moved hundreds of children from reading to recess to lunch. Then there were the desks, heavy wood, ink stains, carved initials, gum hidden underneath. You sat where other children had sat for decades. And on top of that desk, the paper had a smell of its own. Some worksheets arrived warm from the machine, still damp enough to curl at the corners. The print was purple, sometimes too light on one side, and the whole page carried that sharp, sweet chemical smell of the mimeograph room. Teachers did not click print. They planned ahead, typed or wrote on a stencil, cranked the drum, stacked the copies, and hoped there were enough for every desk. If the ink smeared on your fingers, that was part of the assignment. Then came the classroom newspaper, often the weekly reader, folded small and handed out like a delivery from the wider world. Space launches, elections, new inventions, and faraway countries arrived in language children could understand. Today, a teacher can send a document to 30 screens in seconds. In the 60s, information had weight, edges, and a scent. The purple ink faded fast, but somehow, those pages stayed in memory. At the front of many classrooms stood the American flag, usually in a wooden holder near the chalkboard or tucked into the corner by the teacher's desk. When the bell rang, children stood beside their desks, faced the flag, placed a hand over the heart, and recited the Pledge of Allegiance from memory. After that came the quieter bookkeeping that ran the school day. The teacher opened the attendance book, called names, marked absences, counted who was buying lunch, and recorded details in a roll book kept with careful handwriting. Those pages mattered. They told the office who was present, who needed a meal ticket, and which parents might receive a note or phone call. These routines made the morning feel official before the first lesson began. They were familiar, orderly, and civic in a way many students still remember clearly. But some school rituals of the 1960s carried a darker purpose, shaped not by routine, but by fear. Then came the drill no spelling book could explain. At a signal from the teacher or the office, children were told to drop to the floor, crawl under their wooden desks, tuck their heads down and cover the backs of their necks with their hands. The directions were usually given in the same calm voice used for a fire drill. Desks scraped, knees hit the floor, and the room went quiet. All students waited for permission to come back up. To a child, it could feel like another rule to follow. To the adults, it belonged to the Cold War fear of a nuclear attack. That was the strange part of the 1960s classroom. Crayons, lunchboxes, and multiplication tables sat beside instructions for surviving something unthinkable. And next comes the item teased at the beginning, the one that shows the biggest change in school discipline. The paddle was not always used, but its presence was enough to change the temperature of a school day. In many 1960s schools, a wooden paddle might hang in the principal's office, rest in a desk drawer, or simply live in the stories older children told younger ones. Some paddles had holes drilled through them, supposedly to make the swing faster. Some had names written on them as a grim joke. For children who were sent to the office, the walk down the hall could feel longer than the punishment itself. Many adults at the time defended paddling as discipline, not cruelty. They believed it taught respect, order, and consequences. Many children remembered it differently, as fear, embarrassment, and pain delivered by an authority figure. Today, corporal punishment is banned in many school systems and would be unacceptable to most parents and teachers. Even where laws still allow it, the old certainty around it has largely disappeared. The paddle belongs in the memory of the classroom, but not in the nostalgia. From here, school discipline becomes quieter, less about punishment and more about training children to be exact. At the desk, discipline showed up as pencil strokes. Children practiced rows of loops, humps, slants, and circles on ruled paper, trying to keep every letter between the lines. Penmanship was not treated as decoration, it was graded work. Cursive lessons came daily in many classrooms. Students copied letters from the board, then words, then full sentences, learning how each stroke connected to the next. A child who could not write clearly was not simply messy. They were seen as unfinished in a basic school skill. The teacher's red pencil made that standard visible. A crooked line might be circled. A beautiful page might earn a gold star, a sticker, or a place on the bulletin board. Neat work could be praised in front of the class, while sloppy work might be held up as a warning. These habits taught more than handwriting. They taught that there was a proper way to sit, hold a pencil, shape a letter, and finish a page. In the 1960s classroom, practice was not just repetition, it was character training. Then came the lesson that announced itself before it began, the audiovisual cart rolling down the hall. Its metal wheels rattled over the floor, carrying a projector, a folded screen, film reels, extension cords, and sometimes a record player stacked on the lower shelf. For a 1960s class, that cart changed the room instantly. Shades were pulled down, the screen was hooked open, the projector began to hum, and desks stopped squeaking as everyone faced forward. Regular lessons had paused, and that was enough to make the whole class sit straighter. Film strip projectors had their own ritual. A student helper or the teacher advanced each frame by hand, waiting for the recorded beep that meant it was time to turn the knob. The picture clicked forward, the narration continued, and the room stayed unusually quiet. Technology felt important because it had to be delivered, plugged in, threaded, and shared. And not every special delivery came on wheels. Some arrived in crates, usually at the same time each day. Small cartons of school milk were carried in from the hall, cold enough to sweat on the outside, with waxy cardboard seams that had to be pinched open just right. For a few minutes, arithmetic and spelling gave way to the soft thump of cartons landing on desks and the paper smell of straws being unwrapped. The classroom also held a whole world above the chalkboard. Pull-down maps hung from metal brackets, layered one behind another, ready for geography, history, or a sudden reminder of where a country was. The teacher tugged the cord, and the map rolled down with a rattle, showing oceans, borders, mountain ranges, and names printed large enough for the back row. Globes sat on shelves or teachers' desks, tilted on their metal stands, made to be spun by curious hands. And when the map snapped back up, it sounded like the lesson closing shut. Still, one classroom fixture moved without permission, made noise at the wrong time, and never followed the schedule. It was the class pet that ignored every lesson plan. A hamster in a wire cage, a gerbil tunneling through wood shavings, a turtle under a warm lamp, or a goldfish circling a glass bowl became the smallest celebrity in the room. Its care was written on the board or taped beside the cage. 2 children filled the water. Someone measured food. On Fridays, one lucky student carried the cage home for the weekend, along with strict instructions not to lose it, overfeed it, or let a younger brother open the door. Sometimes, of course, the cage was empty. The room froze. Desks scraped back. Children searched under radiators and bookcases, and the teacher tried to sound calm while checking behind the supply closet. No test covered that lesson. Still, children learned to be gentle, patient, and accountable to something smaller than themselves. In a classroom without screens, one tiny animal gave everyone a shared duty, a shared worry, and a story they remembered for life. A 1960s classroom could feel orderly because it left little room for negotiation. Desks faced front. Bells decided movement. Chalkboards held the day's work. Teachers expected quiet, straight lines, clean hands, and answers given when called upon. Some of that built habits children carried for life: patience, respect, shared chores, and attention without constant distraction. Some of it was too harsh, especially discipline that used fear or embarrassment to keep control. That is the honest picture. Floor wax, chalk dust, ringing bells, and strict rules belong to a world with clearer lines, but not always kinder ones. Thank you for watching. Which vanished classroom item do you remember most clearly? The chalk tray, the wall map, the pencil sharpener, or something else entirely? Write it in the comments, especially if your school had different rules, a favorite teacher, or an object we missed. Like and subscribe for more gentle history and everyday memories from the past.